Okay, excellent. Hi, Gabriel. So our speaker, Gabriel Foley, hails from Saskatchewan, Canada. He studied nighthawk habitat use in the boreal forest at the University of Regina, then white-browed sparrow weaver nest building at the University of Pretoria, South Africa. And for the past 4 years, Gabriel has been very ably directing the Maryland Breeding Bird Atlas. And now I understand that in the future you'll be moving to the Maryland Bird Conservation Partnership.
Yeah, that's right.
Very excellent. So I'm extremely pleased to welcome Gabriel tonight as our guest speaker and speaking on atlasing in the final year of the Maryland-D.C. Breeding Bird Atlas. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Emily.
All right, I'm going to give you a co-host so that you can share when you are ready.
All right.
Okay.
Yep, there. Okay. Share screen here. I think that's going to share the... Are you seeing the full slide, or
we're seeing the presentation mode?
Okay, hang on.
Just click on.
There's always got to be a sharing issue if you have a Zoom presentation.
Yeah, we see your next slide. I think the current and the next one.
Okay, there we go.
Yes.
That's good.
Brilliant.
Perfect. That'll be the last technical issue, I'm sure. Thanks for having me back. I am very excited to talk to you about the Atlas because, I mean, among other things, this is the last year. It feels like the Atlas just started. I feel like I just moved to Maryland, and it's almost been 5 years. So I will, I'll walk you through a few slides, which if you've been to one of my talks from the Montgomery Bird Club before, you've definitely seen these first couple slides, but I'll just introduce the project, and then I'm going to talk about where we are right now in terms of, block completion going into the final year. So this is the third Maryland-D.C. Breeding Bird Atlas. A breeding bird atlas is, it's just like a world atlas or a road atlas. It's a collection of maps that describe something. This is about breeding birds instead of, world statistics or about roads for a region. They're repeated about every 20 years, and they usually last for 5 years. They're done all across North America, all across the world, really, but especially in North America. Most states and provinces have one. Ours was one of the first. It was the first in North America. We had some county atlases that were done kind of as practice atlases, and that spawned the start of atlasing in North America. Our first statewide atlas was in the 80s. We had one in the 2000s, and then finally this one started in 2020. The goal is to document all of the birds that are breeding in the region. We overlay this grid that you can see in the top right across the region. Each of those grid blocks are 3 by 3 mile squares. And the goal is to go into each one of them and to document as many breeding birds as you can. We're looking to document, of course, distribution, but we're also looking at abundance and timing of breeding in this atlas. These data can then be used to document population changes and identify which areas are particularly important for birds, and if there have been any population changes in some of our more rare species. So one of the things that is a little bit different for an atlas compared to, like, say, the Breeding Bird Survey, which is strictly just counting birds, Breeding Bird Atlas is focused on the bird behavior. So this is centered around breeding, and it includes everything from a bird that is, just in the right habitat at the right time of year, right up into nest building and eggs. And to do that, we categorize the breeding into one of about 22 different breeding codes that describe the behaviors that you're likely to see. And then these breeding codes, things like a bird that's in the right habitat, or a pair of birds, or a nest with eggs, these are then classed into 3 different categories. Possible breeding bird, which is basically just a bird that's at the right time and the right place. A probable breeding bird, which is something like a bird that is, you've got a pair of birds, or it's very upset at an intruder, something like that. And then you have confirmed breeding, which is essentially where you find the nest or the chicks. And then once we've got the behavior, we record the location and the date. And that is essentially what the Breeding Bird Atlas is. To collect our data, we use the eBird platform, which most people are pretty familiar with now. You can use it on a website or an app. If you haven't downloaded the app, I would recommend it. It's very user-friendly and takes care of a lot of the things like how long you were out for, where you were, that kind of thing. Takes care of that for you. Now, if you want to use it for the Breeding Bird Atlas, you have to use what's called a portal. And this is found in the settings, and you can change it once, especially now that we're in the last year, and you don't have to worry about it again. And what it does is it basically puts a label on your checklists, which are, a collection of sightings from a particular place and time. And it puts a label on those checklists that says, hey, this is for the Breeding Bird Atlas project. And then I can find all of the checklists with that label, and they get used in our set. You can record, the species that you see, the behavior using those breeding codes, the abundance of the birds, where they were, and how long you were out for. And all of this really makes an enormous difference compared to past atlases in the precision of the data that we're able to collect and in the quantity. In the last atlas, there was something like 250,000 breeding codes collected over the course of 5 years, and we're just shy of 1 million breeding codes now. So it's a completely different scale. And then, of course, you can upload photos or recordings along with your sightings, and you can view the sightings from both yourself and other people in almost real time, which makes a big difference when you are trying to coordinate with hundreds of other people. Where's everybody going? What's been done? What hasn't been done? And I'll get in a little bit more about how to use those tools better in a little bit. So here's where we're sitting in terms of effort across the region right now. Each of these blocks that you see on here, these grid cells, those are those 3 by 3 mile blocks. The color represents the amount of atlasing effort that has gone into it. So those are eBird checklists, and you take the length, the duration of those checklists, and you add them up. And the checklists have to have a breeding code on them, and they have to be in the portal to be considered actual atlasing effort. And you can see based on the color, there's anywhere from 0 to 10 hours in a block to over 1,000 hours. So there's quite a wide range in how much time people have spent in a particular area. And you can see that in the area where people live, which is, Montgomery County, Howard County, Baltimore, D.C., there's a lot more effort than places that are sparsely populated, like Somerset County or St. Mary's or Cecil County. So the goal really is to have that sampling effort be pretty well distributed, at least the minimum sampling effort, to be pretty well distributed across the region. Sampling effort is really important for detecting things, right? The longer that you spend out in a location, the more likely you are to detect a bird. And for an atlas, we're dealing with two different kinds of detections. We're detecting the species, but we also want to detect the behavior, which is pretty interesting. So the more time that can be spent in an area, the more likely you are to increase those detections. And you definitely see that in some of the really heavily birded areas where you have 80% confirmations and a species list that is 75 species. But what I really want to emphasize here is that we want to move the effort in the last year away from the areas that are already pretty saturated with effort and basically go somewhere else. We want to go and help out the folks that are in the more rural areas. They don't have the luxury of hundreds of people living in their county. They might only have 2 or 4 or 6. And so for the project to be very successful at a statewide level, we need to make sure that we are moving out into some of those less atlased areas. So how do you know when a block is actually done then? Because, you can put in, there's one block with over 3,000 hours of effort into it. You can just keep going forever. And eventually you're probably going to find something new. How do you know when it's done being sampled? We have 5 block targets that we aim to hit in every single block. We've got about 1,300 blocks. And we're looking to have at least 20 hours of effort. I was just talking about how important effort is for detection probability, increases that probability a lot. We want to have at least 20 hours in every block. We also want to have an hour of nocturnal effort because, owls and nightjars, if you're not out at night, they can be pretty hard to detect. But by going out when they're actually active, you really increase your opportunity for those detections. It makes a huge difference in a block. Now, if a block gets, if those owls are detected and coded without reaching that nocturnal effort, that target doesn't really matter. We're really interested in getting those nocturnal species. So there's lots of blocks that have been marked complete without getting an hour of nocturnal effort. But it makes a huge difference in terms of your likelihood of finding the owls, especially quickly. We're also looking for 70 species in each block. So the way that our block targets kind of work together is that we want to have effort, but there's different kinds of effort, right? You can be out in your yard, watching your feeders and, you log a 10-minute checklist and submit that to the atlas, and that's great. But it's very different from going out, and walking along a road that, with forest and a stream along the side and actively looking for breeding birds. Those are 2 very different kinds of atlasing effort. So we need something else to kind of show the intensity or the quality of the atlasing that went into a place. And that's what these other targets try to get at. We want to have a lot of the species that are present, we want to have as many of them sampled as possible. So in the last atlas, the average in the block was 75 species. So we went with 70 species for this atlas. And you've probably noticed, if you've been out doing very much atlasing, 70 species can be pretty hard to find. It's kind of sad in a lot of ways. The species diversity really seems to have declined. We decided to scale back the target for the eastern shore blocks to 65 species, mostly because of that. And then partial blocks as well, the blocks that are on the border or along the Potomac, those blocks get a target of about 40 species. And then we're also looking for different proportions of breeding codes. Remember, I talked about, you've got your possible category, which is a bird in the right place and time. And you've got your confirmed category, which is, finding a nest or chicks. We want to have at least 25% confirmed codes and no more than 25% possible codes. And this just reflects the like the intensity of, you know, looking for behavior and not just listing species as you go through. Generally, it forces you to be slower, to spend a little more time in a place, and often to come back for a second trip, which again makes a difference in terms of detecting both species and behaviors. Now we have all these targets, but ultimately county coordinators determine when a block is considered to be complete. Some, like, for example, if you look at Worcester County on the Eastern Shore, a lot of the blocks have met the targets out there, especially the, you know, 65 species. But the coordinator thinks, oh no, I think, you know, we can get more species here. Let's not mark this complete yet. So county coordinators know their blocks best, so the decision is largely left up to them to make about when a block is done or not. So in Montgomery County is basically done. Like, you guys deserve a really big hand in getting it wrapped up very well. And Emily and Karen especially did a fabulous job coordinating the county. There's 3 blocks that are technically still incomplete. Rockville Northwest and Center West, they're the 2 light blue blocks there. They're basically done. They just need a couple more species. And then Falls Church Northeast needs a few more species and some more nocturnal. But these are so close that you should basically just consider them done in your mind. Unless you know for certain that you can't or won't be leaving the county to go Atlas. If that's the case, then you should let Emily and Karen know, and these blocks can be yours to help wrap up. They're very, very close. But the rest of you, Montgomery County's done. So you can head on elsewhere to Atlas. In fact, these blocks are so close that the species needs that they have, those species have actually already been found during safe dates. They just haven't actually had a breeding code applied. So I've sent coordinators a list of all the species within safe dates that haven't been coded yet in that block. And then they can reach out to the observers and say, hey, do you think this species might have been breeding there? Can you put a possible code on it? And so hopefully these blocks may even be finished before the breeding season gets here.
Yeah, Gabriel, there is a plan for finishing these blocks, so nobody needs to worry about them except for us. So
fantastic. Okay, so you can ignore most of what I've just said and consider these to be done. You can go somewhere that's not Montgomery County. Okay, so this is looking then at the whole state. We just looked at Montgomery County. Now, if we scale back out and if we look at the average completion progress of incomplete blocks, this is kind of what we get. The blue on this map represents the average for that county of progress towards being complete for blocks that haven't been marked yet. Okay. The darker the blue, the more work that's needed there. And this bar chart down on the bottom in the left, the green one, that shows the same thing, but it just lists it out. You can kind of see it in order a little more easily. And right off the bat, you see that Cecil, Somerset, and Allegheny County really jump out. If you don't know your counties in Maryland, right off the top of your head, Somerset's that dark blue one down in the bottom right. Cecil is the dark blue in the top right. And Allegheny is second from the left out in Western Maryland. All of these counties need quite a lot of work. They're sparsely populated and they don't have many birders. Cecil County has had 2 atlasers almost the entire project. If you are looking for something a little bit closer, you know, it is a fair drive, especially to get down to Somerset. Prince George's County also needs a fair bit of work. The beltway is kind of in the way, but other than that, it's not too bad. So each block has 5 targets to meet, right? And so if you just list all the blocks and how many of the targets that they've met, this is how it looks. So on the bottom here, on the x-axis, you've got the number of targets that are met, 0 on the left, 5 on the right. This is just for incomplete blocks. On the y-axis, the numbers on the left-hand side, that's the count. That's the number of blocks. So this is just a histogram. And you can see that there's about 50 blocks that aren't marked complete yet, but they have met all of their block targets. Some of these are blocks that are still waiting. I'm still waiting to hear back from the county coordinators on whether they want them to be complete or not. Some of them are things like what I was describing earlier with Worcester County, where they've met the targets technically, but the coordinator doesn't think that they're actually done. So you can see that there's a pretty good spread. We've still got quite a few that have only met 2 or 1 or haven't met any targets. But that doesn't really reflect how close they are to meeting the targets. So if we look at the progress towards meeting each of those, it is a little bit more comforting. The average block completion is about 80%, which I said earlier, and most blocks are greater than 75% complete. And there's a big spike of blocks that are right at just below, 100%. They're almost there. They're like the Rockville blocks in Montgomery County. A lot of the blocks here that haven't got much done at all, these are blocks that it doesn't really matter that much. They are blocks with just a sliver of land. They're mostly water, things like that. In fact, a lot of the Somerset blocks are kind of like this. And so they just need a couple of visits, and they won't be, they don't need to meet the targets that the other blocks do. So if we dive into the specific targets a little bit more closely, we're still talking histograms here. So this is the value on the bottom. This is the number of coded species that a block still needs to have. The goal for most blocks is 70. Eastern Shore blocks, it's 65. Smaller blocks, it's just 40. So how many more birds do you need to hit that target? You can see there's one block that still needs like 58 birds to get there. But most of them are really close. We've got about 100 that only need 1 or 2. This is the count of blocks on the left-hand side. And there's, almost 400 that haven't met the species target. You can see that most of these blocks are fairly close. We're pretty good in terms of our species lists. Most blocks have had a good chunk of the birds that are there at least coded. Now, confirmations often take a lot of time to find, right? But this is one of the targets where most blocks are doing actually pretty well. We've got it fairly well covered. There's only a couple hundred blocks that haven't met the confirmation target. And this is the number of confirmations needed to reach a maximum of 25%. And that 25% is of the block's species goal, not just the current species count. You can see, most blocks need 5 or fewer. So we're in pretty good shape here. Now, if you want to think about getting that target reached in blocks, this is one that I would say you can focus on later in the year. As you focus on other needs for a block, you often run into confirmations as you go anyways. And confirmations tend to be more obvious later in the year when you have birds carrying food and loud fledglings. And the confirmations aren't so dependent on safe dates like some of the other breeding codes are. Safe dates are just a set of dates that indicate when a species is pretty much done migrating through an area. And so if you see a bird, you pretty much know that, okay, even though I haven't seen any behavior it's probably here to breed just based on time of year. For possibles, though, this is one of the targets that is we need to, more blocks need this than most other things. There's about 650 blocks that haven't met the minimum target of 25% possibles, or maximum, I guess. Maximum target of 25% possibles. You can see that most of them still need to have 10 or more species, 10 or fewer species upgraded. So this is going to be kind of the same thing. You know, if you've got 20 possibles in a block, you might need to drop it down by 10. You know, that's what this negative number refers to. But this isn't too bad, because possibles are very simple to address, as long as you're intentional about it. Focusing on upgrading possibles early in safe dates is better because birds sing more early in the year. They slow down their singing as it gets hotter, and they slow down as they're caring for their chicks. So getting in early is better from that perspective. It's also better because it just gives you more time to get back to a block, to visit it again. If you visit a block a second time, you can upgrade that to probable, which is, you know, an S7 on songbirds. The main thing with S7, which is a bird that has been singing for a week or more, just kind of indicates that it's on territory. You want that to be the same individual bird. You don't have to overthink that too much. You'll never know for sure that it was the same, but it should be, you know, the goal is that the bird was on territory. So it should be a bird from about the same area. You also want to know how many species you need in a block to upgrade. If you know, okay, I need to get four birds in this block, and then that target is met, then you can use a target species list, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But you can identify the easiest ones. You know, maybe there's an Acadian flycatcher that's still possible. That's pretty easy. They sing a lot. You know, maybe there's red-eyed vireo, those kind of things. If you pick out a handful, you can figure out, okay, these are the best places where I can go to find these and get this target dealt with quickly. As you go through, and actually, if you're making plans to do something, let your county coordinator know that you're planning to do these things. That'll really help them out, so that there's no double dipping going on, and everybody's using their time more efficiently, and they don't have to worry about that. You've taken care of it. So this is the effort target for blocks. How many hours of effort do you need to reach that 20-hour mark? You can see it's pretty uniformly distributed. You know, about half of blocks need 10 or more hours. A lot of the blocks that are needing a lot more effort, 15, 20 hours, those are going to be those small blocks where we're not really looking for that anyways. So, you know, 5 hours, that's about a morning in a block, and that's roughly what, a third of these. Another quarter or a third of the blocks need 2 mornings of work. So this really isn't too bad. And only about 400 and some blocks are still shy of this effort target. So I'm happy about where this lies. Now, nocturnal effort. This can be one of the biggest holdups. And you can see there's over 600 blocks that haven't met the nocturnal effort target. And look at the spike on the right here. These are blocks that still need an hour of effort. They haven't had any nocturnal effort at all. And then if they have had any effort, it's, you know, totally random how much might be in that block. There's no real spikes there. So if you are someone who is interested in finding owls across the state. They are actually much more common and abundant than it seems like they are. They're great horned owls, barred owls, screech owls. They're just about in every block. If you get out and actually make an effort to look for them, you can have some real success with them. This is often the toughest block target to reach, just because you have to go out at night, which I mean, you're not doing that in normal birding, so it's pretty unfamiliar to most people. Really requires you to be intentional. It is a different style of birding, can be a little bit more difficult, but it can be very rewarding. This is the perfect time of year to focus on it, though. This is a great time to detect calling great horned owls and even barred owls. If you haven't done this before, we have some articles on the website. If you just go to the news section, there's on the right, there's a tab that says nocturnal birding, and all the nocturnal articles are listed there together. And there's some good tips in there, written by a few different people. But this is definitely one of the things that holds whether a block is done or not, holds it up. So there's basically two different kinds of styles of atlasing that is going to be happening this coming year. There's like the blocks that they still need to be atlased. These are blocks like in Allegheny County, Cecil County, Somerset County. Nothing really changes for those. They still need a few visits. They've got lots that still has to happen there. Those are the blocks where we really want to have the effort go into it. They're the bigger priority. If you have a morning free, think about going to one of those blocks. The other ones are, blocks like the Rockville block, things that, they just need one more visit to touch something up, and then, they've met the targets and they can be complete. Those can be pretty satisfying because they're quick, simple, and, you can check them off your list. So if you think that one of those styles speaks to you more than others, take that into account when you're planning your atlasing out. But know that the cleanup blocks, those are lower priority. We really want to have a good minimum level of sampling effort across the region. And then if you are making plans, let your coordinators know. Let the coordinator of the county that you're planning to go to, let them know what you're thinking about doing. And don't be afraid to ask them if they have suggestions as well. So, where do you want to go? Just wrap that up. You want to go to blocks that are not complete. So that means not in Montgomery County, not in Howard County. You want to head somewhere else. Prioritize the blocks that have the least amount of progress. We want to have a good distribution of sampling effort. If you're just looking for one number to tell you whether a block needs work or not, I think species count is a good indicator. But there's, you also want to watch the number of possible and confirmed codes in a block. That kind of tells you about the quality of atlasing that's gone in. There's lots of places that do have a good species count, but it's just because, someone has gone through and made a good list once. And then finally, that nocturnal effort really is a bottleneck on getting things done. So if you can get out and spend, even just a few nights looking for owls, that is huge. And make sure that you're submitting checklists, even if you don't have any species on them. If you're stopped and you're listening for owls, that is effort trying to detect an owl. If you don't submit that, we won't know that it ever happened. So when you stop to, listen for some owls, you want to start your checklist. If you don't hear anything, you can just stop it and submit it. Okay, that's great, Gabe. Thank you for telling me all that. But where do I find all of this information? I'm going to tell you. There's a few different spots. I will leave my presentation here and I will go to, oh, screen sharing stopped. I'll share my screen again. Here we go. Go to my web browser here. This is the Atlas effort map on eBird. You've probably seen this already. To get here, you know, if you've never been to the Atlas website, you can just Google eBird Maryland-D.C breeding bird atlas, and then you go to the Explore tab, and it's down here in the bottom left, Atlas effort map. Most people know about this, but not everybody realizes that this is a drop-down menu in the top left with a couple of different things that you can look for, including coded species. I feel like this one gives me a good sense of how a block is doing. I don't know if it's just the different color or what, but I feel like this one is more useful to me than the effort, and confirm species as well. You can see that, you know, Allegheny is really lagging behind in terms of confirmations. You have your legend over here on the right, and the blacked out blocks, those are the ones that are marked complete. We don't have to worry about those anymore. So you're here, you're looking for a block. Where do I want to go? Maybe I want to go somewhere in Allegheny because it looks, you know, it looks kind of rough. So let's see. What about Old Town Northeast? Now, this is the other place where you can go and get some information. You click on View Block Data, and this will take you to a page that has everything listed for that block in terms of how much effort has gone into it, how many possible, probable, confirmed codes are there, what species have been found. Oh, and if you click on the header here, it'll sort. So you can, I pretty much always do that when I come to a page. It'll sort the confirmations and then the probable codes. Now, if you want to look at a whole county, you can do that from this tab here on the right, Explore Atlas Regions. And say we want to look at Allegheny, and it'll take us to the Allegheny page. You have an overview here, which I don't really find to be that useful. What I like is the blocks page. There's a tab in the middle underneath the Allegheny name. This has all the blocks listed, and you can also sort by whatever you want. So if you want to sort by effort, you can see Cumberland Southeast has 300 hours compared to Cumberland Northwest, which has 4 hours. This is nice to get like a feeling for things, but what I actually like the most is, what did I say? Old Town Northeast. That's one we were going to look for. There is a folder, and I'll share all of these links. They're all available on the website. I can put them in the chat, but this is on our Google Drive, and it is a folder full of block maps. I think these are some of the more useful tools, kind of pulls together all the things that I think are more useful when you're atlasing. The eBird stuff is good, but I think that, let's see, we've got Old Town, here it is, Old Town Northeast. So we'll open that up. One of these PDFs exists for every block. It tells you the block name in the top and the county that you find it in, and shows you the little red dot here, shows you where in the state you can find that block. These 5 progress bars show you how much progress has been made towards each of the block targets. And we've now listed the species goal because it's different for some blocks, right? I was saying there's blocks that have a 40 target, blocks that have a 65 target. It now says how many species it's aiming for. So this is a 70 species block, and it has 46 of those species coded. This map, this shows you the satellite imagery for the block boundary. Each one of these dots is a location where a checklist was submitted from. So you can get an idea of where people have gone to Atlas in the block. These are only checklists that had breeding codes. The bigger the circle, the more checklists that were submitted from that place. The brighter the color, the more species that were found at that place. And if it's an eBird hotspot, there will be a little eBird hotspot pin that shows up on the map as well. There's also a little bar graph here that shows when people have been atlasing across like seasonally, and how much effort have they put in at each of those times. So you can see that there was a little bit in this block in like late April, a little bit in May, and then somebody went in and did one pretty big visit in like mid-June, and then another one in like late June. And then this blue line, that's for nocturnal effort. So somebody's gone in and done 2 visits in late April, probably for screech owls. You can see when the PDF was created, so you know how relevant the data are. Unfortunately, the way that the download of data from eBird works, we can't update these during the field season quickly enough. So they're great in like May or early June, but once you get into July, you can't really trust the species lists that are on them. A lot of it may have changed. That is when you might want to check it against these the block, the eBird block maps. I still like to print these out and mark them up. I find it, just me personally, I find it a little easier to carry paper in the field. There's a table here that compares the current results for the block with the past. So you can see this block had 63 species in the first atlas, 69 in the second atlas, and we're now sitting at 46. So seems like there's lots of room for this species list to grow. And then this is what I think is the most useful part, the target species. These are the birds, well, it lists everything. At the bottom, it has all the birds that have been coded in the block, probable and confirmed. It has the birds that were found in a past atlas that haven't been coded yet. It also has all of the possible species. So birds that they were either singing or they were in the right habitat. These are the ones that you might want to upgrade. And then this is a new feature. It also has all of the species that haven't been coded in that block, but they have been coded in adjacent blocks. So you can see red-shouldered hawk. This has been found in 2 nearby blocks. Probably is going to be in this block. Broad-winged hawk, screech owl, so on. I think that this is going to be really useful this season. And you can find one of these documents for every block on the Google Drive. The other tool that you might want to use is very similar. It's the Rich Data Explorer, which I named after the guy who made it, Rich Downs. It is an ArcGIS map. So it links to a lot of these same things, but you can use it on the web or on your phone, and it shows your location while you're out in the field. And this we can update weekly. So this will be more up to date later on in the season than those PDFs will be. Where's there it is. You can get information for each block. Pretty much all the information that's on the PDFs you can get in here. It tells you what the target species are, the neighboring block species, the species that have already been coded, and it links to that strategy map that I showed you, the block status on eBird, all these things. We are also in the process of adding in a layer that shows where checklists have been submitted from. And we're also in the process of changing these dots for each block. Right now, it just shows whether it's complete or not. We're in the process of changing it to be, representative of how far along the block is. So it's easier to pick out blocks that need more work. This is really, really good when you're out in the field. We've had it for a couple of years now, and I find it very useful. The final thing that I'll show you is pretty new. I haven't sent this link around yet. It'll be in an email from me probably on Friday. Coordinators have seen this, and that's about it. This is a list that just shows everything that I've been talking about. These are all of the blocks that aren't complete yet, and all of the targets. It shows what the species goal is for the block. It shows what the current status is for each one of those targets, whether it's met the targets, how many targets it's met. Those are nice for filtering. And then over here, it shows how many things are needed to meet the targets. So nothing is needed on these ones, but here's one that needs 12 species, and that's it. Once it gets 12 species, it can be marked complete. And then you have, the proportion of progress towards each one of those targets and the total progress, and then also how many owls and nightjars have been found in blocks that still need nocturnal effort. So that'll be coming around pretty soon. I am almost done. I will go back to my slides. Do you see that slide, or did it stop sharing? It's still sharing, right?
Still sharing.
Okay. All right. So this is going to sound pretty silly, but one of the things that I really think is helpful is to put things down on the calendar. Right now, it's much slower than it is in the summertime, both like for life in general and for atlasing. So if you use this time now, pick out a few blocks that you think might be interested, talk to a county coordinator, and put them on your calendar. Pick a date, say, I'm going to go to Old Town Northeast on June 2nd, and then I'm going to go back there on June 8th. It's on the calendar, much more likely to have it happen. Time flies, and it is, I know that everyone has experienced this, where you had such good intentions to get out and do some atlasing this year, and the time flew by. It just didn't happen. So you put it on your calendar, it's more likely to happen. Remember, this is the last year, Today was January 17th. We're not going to be atlasing on another January 17th. That was our last January 17th to go atlasing. So, yeah, we're almost done. But what can you expect from me and the coordinators going forward? Our 2024 plan is basically a lot of what I have told you already, but a little more specific. So we have those general needs for each block listed out, right? You need 4 species to finish it. You need to upgrade 4 possibles, whatever. What we're working on doing right now is compiling exactly what species those are, where you can find them, that kind of thing. So that really all that you need to do is just say, hey, I'm available. Tell me where to go and I'll go do it. You don't have to spend much time, researching it, or really helps too if you're not familiar with a place. We want to, if possible, assign as many of those needs to individual atlasers as we can. It's like block adoption, but scaled way down, more specific. So you will likely be getting contacted by a county coordinator at some point asking you, hey, are you available to go to Old Town Northeast and find, these 10 species? Would you be willing to do that? And then we also, as the season goes through, this is our last chance. So we'll be following progress updates pretty closely. It's a little bit tricky to do with the way that eBird works, but we're going to do our best. If you already have an idea of where you would like to go or what kind of atlasing you want to focus on, let your county coordinator know, because this really will help them plan things out. I had someone email me today and say, hey, Gabriel, I'm going to be, I've got 3 days that my husband and I, we want to go and have a little trip somewhere. So we're going to go atlasing. Where do you think we should go? That is so nice. And I was able to point them to, to a spot, and that is very nice. All right, we're almost done here. We do have a few blockbusting trips coming up. These are events, they're kind of a mix of socializing and atlasing. The idea is to all get together and go out and intensely atlas a couple of blocks over a short time frame. So we have 4
Hey, Gabriel.
events. Yes,
Are you showing a slide right now for the blockbusting?
I am.
Okay, you are still on the spreadsheet.
I'm still on the spreadsheet. Oh, that's why it's okay. Here, I'm going to stop sharing that. And thank you for telling me. How's that?
Much better.
All right. We've got 4 events that are scheduled right now. They're 2 in Somerset and 2 in Allegheny, and they're both at the MOS sanctuaries. One's in late May in Somerset, and then they're just staggered a week apart. So I've put the dates here. If you would like to come out and join us, it really is going to be a lot of fun. It's basically going to be a summertime Christmas bird count. So for Somerset, contact Margaret Pothig. You can get her at somerset@mdbirds.org. And then Allegheny, the coordinators are Mark Eanes and Melissa Hensel. And the county coordinator addresses are all the same. It's the county name at mdbirds.org. And the other thing that we're going to do, if you were participating in the Atlas right when it kicked off in 2020, that was a leap year. And so we thought, hey, you don't get to go out every day on February 29th birding. Let's make it a big day of birding. I thought it was a really fun way to kick the Atlas off. The folks that I was with, we had a great time. We met up afterwards. Ton of fun. This is a map, well, a figure of the records for February 29th county listing in Maryland-D.C. Very prestigious. I don't think anybody's ever compiled this before. I could be wrong, but maybe if you are interested in holding a personal, very prestigious record, you might want to think about, having a big day on February 29th. St. Mary's County only has 17 species. Allegheny only has 16. This is not atlasing. This is just going out and birding, but it leads into atlasing because we're going to have a kickoff event. The date that I have tentatively is March 2nd, but that may change. But there will be a kickoff event right around the leap day. And if you want to, it's going to be an in-person thing, which we haven't had very many of for the Atlas. So if you want to come out, and we're going to have some Atlas themed trivia and just, have a fun evening chatting and strategizing for the next year. I will send more details out soon. Oh yeah, and the Maryland record for Big Leap Day is at 126. Baxter Beamer, who is from Virginia, I know that we shouldn't hold that against them, but maybe a Marylander can take that over this year. All right. In summary, this year, in our last year, when you're out atlasing, be intentional about where you're going and what you are doing. Head to incomplete blocks, prioritize the blocks that have the least amount of effort. There's several different ways to find that, both visually on a map and using numbers in a spreadsheet. Cecil, Somerset, and Allegheny counties they have the most blocks with the least progress. So prioritize those counties. If you want something closer, Prince George's is a great choice, especially for nocturnal effort. And then communicate with county coordinators. And speaking of county coordinators, I really want to say thank you to Emily and Karen. They have really done a fantastic job in Montgomery, and the current status of the county is very in large part due to their work. So thank you, Emily and Karen. And that's it for me. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you very much, Emily and Karen.
So are there any questions for Gabriel? There are a few things off the chat, but anyone have anything?
I had wanted to see if we could pull up that links list again, if that's all right.
Oh, the links list?
Yes.
I can put that in the chat.
Okay.
And actually,
what?
can you show all the slides that we missed? Because we didn't see any of them after the end part.
There were only two. There's a picture of
okay.
a seaside sparrow and a picture of a ruffed grouse.
Okay.
Here's a link to the strategy maps. These are the ones that are on the Google Drive. And here is a link to that spreadsheet with the block needs.
This Gabriel's presentation will be on our YouTube channel within a week. So you can also go there to see anything that he showed in his presentation.
So Jeff brought up a good point in the chat about those who are new to atlasing might have not known about putting their checklists into the Breeding Bird Atlas portal as opposed to just regular eBird. Even if you code in the regular checklist, the data is not going to go to the Atlas unless it's in the portal. So if you have been coding and you think that you've got some stuff for the Atlas, but you haven't been putting it in the portal, you can change all those checklists to, you can change the portal on those checklists by going to the checklist tools button. If you open up your checklist, there's a checklist tools button. You can click on it, go down and to the change portal and change to the Breeding Bird Atlas. So, did you want to add to that?
No, that covers it.
Okay. And then Mike had a question, I think, if Mike's still on, Mike Bowen. What's your advice on when a birder should use the portal as opposed to the default portal, the time of year, outside the breeding period? Does it make a difference? You know, we've been over this in the early parts of the early days of the Atlas, but maybe go over it again.
It's a great question. It really depends. It depends on how easy it is for you to change the portal. Like if you're pretty comfortable with flipping it back and forth, then if you have a breeding code on the checklist, put it in the portal. If you don't, then keep it in regular eBird. If you are using breeding codes, if it's an actual behavior of breeding, then you should submit that anytime. In fact, I was talking to Scott about this with his waxwing observation. You know, those waxwings, those individual waxwings, their courtship display doesn't mean that they're gonna, like, it's a courtship display, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna necessarily nest in that block. So that doesn't really represent breeding for the atlas, but it's still breeding behavior. It still represents part of the timing of their breeding. This is still interesting information to have. This particular atlas project won't consider that a breeding observation. We'll recode that in the review to be, you know, no code, but someone else may come along and want to use our atlas data set and say, you know, I'm really curious about when waxwings are, you know, beginning their courtship displays. They might be able to take the waxwing data set from the New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Wisconsin, West Virginia atlases. They might be able to pull all that together and look at the phenology of waxwings across the Northeast. So if it's real breeding behavior, you should submit that even if it gets recoded. If it's a possible breeding code like habitat or singing, then that's more like a bird that's in the right time at the right place. So if it's not the right time, then it shouldn't really go on. It shouldn't really go on the species. We will catch that in review. But that would be the recommendation is to not even code it in the first place.
Thank you.
So Gabriel, just one last thing. Do you have an early, can you give us an idea of what you're going to do with all this data? And you publishing papers, gonna make a book, gonna...
Yeah. So we have a final product subcommittee that is putting together the plan for that, but yeah, we'll have a book. We haven't decided if there will be like a digital product associated with it or not, but yeah, the plan right now is to have a book come out in the next few years and complement the other two. So that'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's good.
You know who's in charge of like how that information gets used? Like, are you like the project lead on that, or?
Yeah, so the data are kind of co-owned. eBird, of course, has it because it's all submitted to eBird, so they can share it with people who request. But then it's also the DNR here, the state agency. They're the other side of it. The way that it kind of works is eBird houses like almost like the raw data side of things, and then we'll have kind of the cleaned up version of the data set.
Oh, Patricia Wood has a question.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'm. Well, two questions. One real quick one, because of what Gabriel was saying about the fine points of what you have your portal set at. Just to be clear, for those of us who really find it much easier to leave it set on Breeding Bird Atlas at all times, that's still okay, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't make that very clear.
Well, it's good to know the details and fine points, but I just wanted to give you a chance to say that.
Yes, you are 100% correct. If you're comfortable switching back and forth, do it. If you're not, it is 100% okay to just leave it on the portal all the time. The only thing that it really does is, especially if there's no breeding codes, is it just adds to the effort total on eBird. But for our data set, that all gets taken out anyways. So everything that I show you is checklists that have breeding codes.
But it's still okay, and it makes sure people don't think they had it on the portal. They should have, and they really didn't. So it'll cut out some of the ones that lose data because they forgot they hadn't switched back. I can imagine doing that too. And then the other question that I had, is there another, because I can't see myself going outside of Montgomery County. I could go Bard Owls easily just by waking up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. So if you know, hey, I'm not going to be able to go atlasing elsewhere, but I want to keep atlasing, that's totally okay. You can get those same strategy maps that I was showing you. There are plenty of birds that are still undetected. And with the new, birds that are found in adjacent blocks, it highlights the birds that are likely to be in a place that haven't been coded yet. So that's a great place to start. Look at a block and say, oh wow, this block doesn't have Acadian flycatcher somehow. I'm going to go out and I'm going to find an Acadian flycatcher.
I bet Montgomery County does, though.
Yeah.
We're not really short on Acadian flycatchers.
Right. Well, you never know. Last atlas, I confirmed wood thrush as I was driving out of the parking lot to go atlasing. It was carrying food.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I hear them singing all around me, or I did. And you never know. But I just wondered if there was another county besides PG County, or in addition to, that was low on things, but that was close to Montgomery.
Yeah, I mean, Anne Arundel has quite a few blocks that can still use some work. Carroll and Frederick do as well, but it's mostly the northern blocks. So
Sure.
Yeah, I guess it depends on, whether you want to drive out into the rural areas or, down the Beltway and on 50.
That news of the passing of Don Messersmith, who was 95. He was a former professor of entomology and ornithology at the University of Maryland, and he was a friend of many in the club. Our sympathies are with his family and friends. If anybody wants to say anything in particular, a personal anecdote or such, feel free at this point.
I could say that a few of us, quite a number of us, went to a service that was in Don's memory last Saturday, and it was quite moving and sometimes quite funny as well. And someone talked about Jim Green. Jim Green was present. There were quite a number of people who came from out of town. Jim Green, Wayne Bell, Gwen Brewer, let's see, who else was there? Anna, do you remember names that I'm forgetting? Or George Jett with Gwen, but
George Jett was there with Gwen.
George Jett. Anyway.
Yeah.
And so it was well attended, and there were lots of photos available. A PowerPoint presentation that apparently Don had prepared himself, and when he felt that he was really going, he said, "Okay, it's time to add the last photo to the PowerPoint presentation," which is quite interesting.
It was amazing. He was in Germany, for example, only 5 years after the end of the war with the bicyclists. I guess he was, and he had all these photographs from, Hitler's Berchtesgaden and all these places like that. Didn't think of Don as being we knew he was a world traveler for birding, but he was a world traveler before that. And so I think he was one of the first people to bicycle to Egypt, through Egypt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know.
He was one of the first ones to take birders to China, if I remember his presentation.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
The thing I remember is every time we went to Australia, he insisted we bring him back 4 jars of Vegemite.
I just want to say a little bit about the music that was played, said the former music teacher. So I guess I got there about 15 minutes before the service, and I heard this piano playing, and I didn't know if it was taped or not because I couldn't see the piano. The piano was behind the altar, and I determined that no, there was somebody playing it. And I think the man started out with a hymn and then he started improvising on it. I am sure the next song was Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire. But then he went into this old song called Skylark, which I just was introduced to at Hank Diedel's several months ago. And then I thought, I wonder if he's just going to keep playing bird songs and improvising. But the guy was fabulous. I mean, it was so upbeat. It wasn't your normal, 4/4 hymn going into the next 4/4 hymn. It was just absolutely wonderful. And I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. At least I really did.